back in April, I was out here. It was pre-draft. And we decided, it's mid-April, right? It was like April 10th. And, we're 2 weeks out from the draft. It's kind of, we're in the cycle. We're past free agency. We're past a lot of the trades. And we got a couple weeks to the draft. And so we decided, fun exercise. You guys love top 10 lists. Every post-production meeting,
lists.
Brockman goes, can you do a top 10 list?
What do we got?
Do a top 5?
Can we come up with one? What do you got?
I did top 10 storylines to be sorted out for the rest of the NFL offseason. I think we framed it as sorted out potentially by the draft. So this is where we landed with the top 10 questions. We're going to review. We're going to check my work.
Check your work.
On exactly where we were.
Let's go.
Number one question was, who will be Steelers QB1? That point did not have a commitment from Aaron Rodgers, and it was real. There was not a commitment there. He came around on it late May, early June, finally showed up for the minicamp here.
Stay by your phone, man. I may need you.
That one obviously got resolved. No, don't stay by the phone with Aaron. Remember, he's got bad cell reception. You got to FaceTime him.
FaceTime.
That's the only way to get him. Number two, where does Shedeur Sanders land? I did not listen back specifically to that answer because I guarantee it wasn't 5th round to Cleveland. Now, I did leave open. There was a real possibility, as much as everybody to that point, and I think it was pretty clear by April 10th Cam Ward was going to be the number one pick, but there was still enough discussion of, all right, QB2, that's set. Rich said that to me, I remember draft week, all right, QB2, who's QB3? And I said, I think the issue is who's QB2, because you can find it every different way for those next 4 guys. And we'll get to more on that in a second here. Shedeur, the question at that point was, does he go to the Giants at 3 or somewhere later if they trade back in? Does he go to the Steelers? Those are the only 2 teams that I believe I mentioned in that segment, because if he doesn't go to those 2, I don't know where he's going. There is not a planet. There was not 1 second in my brain where I thought we're going to be sitting there on day 3 of the draft and this guy's still going to be on the board.
Crazy.
I then didn't think after day 3 of the draft we'd be sitting here going, should Shedeur be QB1 in Cleveland? This is how far along we've come. A lot of twists and turns over the last 4 months and change. Number 3 question at that time, back on April 10th, does Kirk Cousins get traded? No. That's still a no. There was already, remember, he's got a no trade clause, so he controls it. Do $27.5 million. The Falcons have been unwilling, were throughout the process. There hasn't really even been a lot of movement recently here. They were unwilling to take on much of that, if any, of that contract. So it was a tough deal to move. And then as some of the other puzzle pieces came together, you were left with a place where there's no spot for Kirk. The last spot was resolved with question number 1 when Aaron Rodgers commits to Pittsburgh, because the Steelers had gone down the road with with Justin Fields, who ultimately chose the Jets. They were interested in Matthew Stafford, which, can you imagine if somebody traded for Matthew Stafford and then readjusted his contract and then he's not ready to play? It's a whole other can of worms than what we're talking about right here, because now you got draft capital out the window too. In the end, it didn't go that way. Steelers, they toyed with Russell Wilson. They really never came after him. He ultimately took the spot with the Giants because the Steelers couldn't tell him that we want you back. We're waiting on Aaron. Maybe we get to you. Right now we're waiting on Aaron. So Kirk, still a Falcon. Number 4, does Trey Hendrickson get traded? August 12th, rather. We are now. I just went a time warp in my own brain. August 12th. It still seems unlikely that Trey Hendrickson's going to be traded. I can tell you, they have gotten calls recently.
From?
They have gotten calls recently from other teams that could use a pass rusher. Who couldn't use the
like a team
guy
in
who
the,
led the league in sacks?
Like a team like 30 minutes south of Boston, maybe?
They've gotten calls from multiple teams about Trey Hendrickson. And as much as they're in general agreement on the big numbers, the years, the total money, like that part's easy. They're not on the same page on the guarantees. That's what's been holding it up. Trey Hendrickson has made clear publicly and privately, I want a multiple year guarantee. I don't want to be back in the same spot in the year. The Bengals, whose history is we only guarantee the signing bonus. We don't guarantee anything else. We guarantee the initial bonus, nothing further. But they broke that with Joe Burrow. They broke it with Jamar Chase. They bent it slightly with T. Higgins, although T. Higgins ended up doing a sub-market deal that in a year he's probably going to be the one coming back going, if he was healthy and he plays like this and he's making catches like, I saw the one in practice yesterday or 2 days ago and people were saying like, this looks like Randy Moss. Like, T. Higgins is legit. He just always seems to be He's got a hamstring. It's going to be 3 weeks. That's been frustrating for him, too. But if he comes back and has the type of year he can have, he's going to be the next one who's coming back to the Bengals and going, well, I can't be making $28 million a year now. What are we doing here? Trey Hendrickson still on the Bengals.
What do you put that percentage-wise? Something gets done before week 1.
It's the Bengals, man. That's the thing. They have adjusted their business principles. But in this case, they're sticking to it's a 30, 31-year-old pass rusher. And we don't want to be stuck holding the bag 3 years from now or, in 2027 if he's not the same guy. To which the response from Trey Hendrickson is, you just challenged me 2 years in a row, and I have 30-plus sacks over the last 2 seasons. I led the league. What more do you want to see? What evidence have I given you that I'm not going to be available? TJ Watt, who's the same age, they're separated by like a month in birth date. TJ Watt has been hurt. He's played through a lot, but he's missed time. Last year, he was banged up down the stretch. He didn't register, I believe, a stat in the Steelers' last 3 games. That's a guy who you're like, all right, hold on. TJ Watt's franchise player, one of the faces of the organization, future Hall of Famer. But are we wise to commit? What did he get? $100+ million guaranteed. Is this really a good idea to do this right now with TJ Watt? You don't have that. Trey Hendrickson, you certainly can argue he's not as freaky of an athlete as TJ Watt is. But production-wise and durability, he's been one of the best. So does it get done by week 1? This is the same organization that basically forced Carson Palmer to retire and then traded him to the Raiders in the middle of the season. And then he went to Arizona and had a career renaissance and went on a deep playoff run there. A lot of different things can still happen. You'd say the smart money, can't give gambling advice.
Wouldn't ask for it.
But the smart money, parochially speaking here, would be on something getting done. Okay. Number 5 on my list of top 10 questions entering draft weekend from April 10th. Will we see any other big trades? Well, the big one ended up being involving a draft pick. At that point, there was not a whiff of the Browns actually moving out of the number 2 slot. They ultimately felt like they got such great value getting a future first-round pick, getting additional draft capital, that it made sense for them to go down, still get a solid player to help their defensive front in Mason Graham, and then let the Jaguars have a guy who their GM, Andrew Berry, 2 days before the draft compared to Shohei Ohtani. I mean, that's how highly thought of he is. We'll see how it works. I know Brockman thinks that Travis Hunter's going to be a big flop in Jacksonville, and they're going to regret it. It's going to be one of the worst trades in NFL history.
Not what I said.
That's what I heard. That's what I heard. We did have the Jalen Ramsey trade, although that ended up being months later. That was 4th of July week. Yeah, Darren Waller got traded the next day. Yep. Those were pretty big trades. But Ramsey was already on the trade block at this point. I think it wasn't public until maybe a week after that. I should remember. We're the ones who broke that story. But it was around that time. It was apparent that he was going to be potentially traded, but it didn't happen. There weren't those big veteran trades during the draft, right before the draft, like we've had in recent years. You did have some trickling down, and we still got some hanging out there. Number 6, this was an interesting one. Which wide receiver gets taken first in the 2025 NFL draft? We were not counting Travis Hunter.
Right.
He's in the unicorn category.
Sure.
At that point, Tetairoa McMillan was the one that had been talked about a lot through the process, but then he didn't run. Matthew Golden did run and ran really fast. And you had at least some variance in terms of what style of receiver do you want. It ended up being T-Mac at number 8 overall. And I remember getting a call, not going to say from whom, but the night before the draft, I'm at a pre-draft party with like the families of the players and things like that. T-Mac's on the dance floor just absolutely cutting a rug. Like, best dancer by far out there. Just a cool kid all around. Talked to him last week at Panthers camp. I remember getting a call and walking back in and going, I think T-Mac's going to go number 8 to the Panthers. Like, it was pretty apparent. They were exploring all kinds of trades down, and they just weren't finding the type of value they thought. There were other teams that were going to come and take T-Mac probably right behind him, including the Cowboys, who were at 12. There might have even been a team that would have leapfrogged the Cowboys to go and get T-Mac. Panthers ultimately said, we're going to stand in and take this guy at number 8. And when you talk to people there, I was there, a week ago. Time has stood still for me. It was sometime last week. And just talking to everybody there, they're all like, dude, like this guy every day. The one-handed catches, the splash plays. He's also a really smart dude. And you see that when you talk to him. They've already cross-trained him. So what they're going to try to do is, because he's such a rare guy, he's not I've heard like the Mike Evans comparisons. He's not really Mike Evans because Mike Evans, besides the fact that he's a future Hall of Famer and has had 11 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons.
Something like that.
But he's also like a big physical, like he will push, especially when Marshawn Lattimore's across from him.
Of
They're
course.
just getting a fist fight and maybe get ejected. But he's also like a big physical dude. T-Mac, one of the things they had to teach him in the early going, he realized right away, hey, you're going against J.C. Horn and Mike Jackson in practice. Like, those guys are going to have their hands all over you. It took about a week into camp, and then it was like, all right, I got to learn to do that stuff. He's more of a shifty type of a guy. You saw it in the preseason game, a big play down the field from Bryce Young. That's what you're going to see from T-Mac. They actually, not to digress on a Panthers tangent here, but you look at what they've got right now in their receiver group. You have Tetairoa McMillan, T-Mac. I can't say his name
T-Mac.
the way that he says it, so I'm just going to go with T-Mac. You have Xavier Legette, who was top pick last year.
Who got ejected from a preseason game.
He was either, I think he was the 32nd overall pick. But he is a big physical dude. You got Adam Thielen, who's still there and is now going into like year 14 or something in the NFL, which is unbelievable for a guy who got into the NFL he was out of Minnesota State Mankato. No one even thought that like he was a prospect. Shows up to the Vikings tryout camp. Rick Spielman used to call it the Call of the Wild, where they invite everybody from every local college. There'd literally be like 150 guys in uniform. It was crazy. But they'd find like one or two guys every year. And I get a DM from some local kid saying, hey, Tom, like I follow you on Twitter, just letting you know, like I'm signing with the Vikings. I'm like, oh, good for you, dude. That's really cool. Thinking, all right, I'll tweet this and never see him again. Adam Thielen is that guy. 14 years later.
Wow.
And millions of dollars. It's turned out okay. But he's there. Hunter Renfro's there. They have Coker, who played well for him last year. They've got a lot of interesting parts around Bryce Young, not to mention they want to be a run-first team. They invested a ton of money in the guards last year. I think they're going to be an interesting offense to watch because you do have more weaponry than you had in the past. T-Mac ended up going there. Number 7, I'll speed this up a little bit. From April 10th, top 10 questions entering draft weekend. How many quarterbacks go in round 1? Mike Hoskins played that clip back for me earlier today. And again, the caveat I gave, the over-under was 2.5 at that time. And while I could not give gambling advice,
We wouldn't ask for it.
that was my caveat on the whole thing was Cam Ward is going 1. Beyond that, we don't know. But I thought it would be either 2 or 3 in some combination of whether it was Shedeur, Dart, Milroe, and Shuck would end up going in the first. It ended up being the under. It ended up being Dart, who the Giants trade up for. That was the round pick 20, somewhere around there. Can't remember the exact number.
Pick 20.
There you go, number 20. Shuck ended up going 40. That was QB3. Then you had a long wait till you got to Dylan Gabriel, who snuck in there, and Jalen Milroe, among other quarterbacks, before Shedeur in the 5th. Number 8 question, who will be the Vikings' other quarterback, was the way it was framed. So that actually did. That is one trade that did get done during the course of the draft, which was then bringing in Sam Howell as number 2. There were still at that time people pushing the idea that Aaron Rodgers was waiting for J.J. McCarthy to fall on his face in OTAs, which was just not the case. Aaron Rodgers, Kevin O'Connell have known each other a long time. And they had conversations about it, absolutely. It's a 4-time NFL MVP. You have that conversation. But they had committed to J.J. McCarthy. So who's the backup? Something happens to J.J. again. Sam Howell, now that guy in Minnesota. Weird tangent on that. I was at the league meeting there in May, I think it was, the spring league meeting. And I'm walking through the hotel, and all of a sudden I'm like, Sam? It's just Sam Howell. And I was like, that's right. And like, I had interviewed him so many times at the Senior Bowl. I hadn't seen him since, but I'm like, in my head, I'm like, Sam, that's right. He's here now. He's living out of the hotel. It's a weird life, man. If you're not a starting quarterback in the NFL, things can get weird really quick. You're all rooting for the Sam Darnold story, which Darnold went from the Jets to the Panthers to the 49ers to the Vikings, now to the Seahawks. And it took him a solid, how many years is that? 6 years? 7 years to get his real opportunity in Minnesota.
Yeah, he was, 2018 draft?
And if J.J. McCarthy doesn't tear up his knee in the preseason opener last year, you have him breathing down Sam Darnold's neck last year. And it's wild how that happens. Yeah. We saw it with Baker Mayfield, who went Cleveland to Carolina to the Rams to the Bucks. I think that's it, right? Yeah, that's it.
Yep.
And that's what it took for Baker Mayfield to get it. Maybe that's what's out there for Sam Howell. Everybody loves Sam Howell, the dude, and he's super tough and he can run. It's just a little bit undersized. So you could see Sam Howell starting again, although the Vikings don't hope so, because that means something happened to J.J. McCarthy. Number 9, where do big name free agents land? The only one of the names I mentioned when we played it back this morning was Keenan Allen. I said, does he end up back with the Chargers? Yep. It took 4 months. We're back. And number 10, will Green Bay win the draft? The answer was yes, because I was talking about the city of Green Bay. They absolutely won the draft. My one regret in that segment, we played it back this morning. I said, I'm not talking about if you draft a wide receiver in round 1. We all know that's not happening. You got me. Brian Gutekunst. Bam. Matthew Golden to Green Bay.
Looks awesome so far.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show live weekdays from 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern on Roku Sports Channel in the U.S.